listened to a young girl who was saying that the Nigerian community here is totally very angry. It covers all the aspects of various sectors of our journalism.
This was the Ijo country of the Niger Delta of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He went to several schools to make your academic education as a government college to Delhi. And
go gather, destroy their food. Make security camp and that other camp, Tongo camp, don't compensate everybody.
in its generation sometimes. Today's Unfocused will be on the side of J.C. Clark, a poet and writer, and we shall also be very interested in his point as more dancer.
It's someone that needs to be exploited.
Some lives are meaningful, some are empty. Lives that are meaningful, with too much meaning and riches to offer humankind. Long after some of these earthly adventures are no more, one can still find footprints of these great lives on the pavements of our contemporary lives.
Good evening, you're welcome to the program Green Planet. Depletion explores ways in which habits and practices within subpopulations can be transformed into devices that can help in curbing ozone depletion and the incidences like climate change, global warming, which in turn affect food production, hunger, poverty levels, migrations and well-being in Cameroon, Africa and the world. It draws inspiration from local and global contexts in order to argue for holistic processes towards this end. A lot of people have talked about ozone layer and ozone depletion, but it will be worthwhile just to revisit it for academic and other purposes. Chlorofluorocarbons were invented in the United States, but have been widely used across the world in our refrigeration, air conditioning, and other industrial processes. The ozone layer, which is in the stratosphere, protects life on Earth from exposure to dangerous levels of ultraviolet light. It does that by filtering out harmful substances like chlorine and bromine that are non-water soluble. And when the ozone layer is degraded, it leads to a situation where ultraviolet radiation reaches the Earth's surface directly. And this has some ramifications on crop yields, mutation of plants, and it also affects life in oceans. And Kanda was talking about phytoplankton production and all those issues. It causes other things like skin cancers, cataracts, and it can impair the immune system. And ozone depletion describes two distinct but related phenomena. A steady decline of about 4% per decade in the total volume of ozone in the Earth's stratosphere, and a much larger springtime decrease in stratospheric ozone over Earth's polar regions. The latter phenomenon is referred to as the ozone hole. And we'll be moving to the next slide, which is, I have tried to highlight some non-eco-friendly habits which are very rife in our society, that if they are modified, it can help to shape things for a better environment and for a more sustainable living within Cameroon, Africa, and the world. We have a deep culture of plastic use in households and public spaces. Plastics are non-biodegradable, hence clog and destroy soils, which are vital for agriculture. The dumping of plastics into the sea, this leads to clogging of the seabed, destruction of species, and spawning grounds. All of us eat fish, we're in a coastal area, and we have to take it very seriously. The dumped old fridges, computers, air conditioners, perfume cans, aerosols also emit ozone depletion substances, hence recycling them must be pursued. The destruction of trees for some agri models. Generally, when you want to do monocrops, forests are brought down, and it affects our capacity to trap carbons, because before even the palm oil plantations get to growing, a lot of biodiversity must have been destroyed. That lack is something that affects us seriously. dependence on wood from fuel for drying and cooking, which has harmful carcinogenic properties. It pollutes the atmosphere, and it's in a series of slow processes that can be modified with modern technologies. The low use of animal dung for organic manure or for the production of biogas. Chlorofluorocarbons are concentrated in dung, hence must be transformed into other uses, not to escape into the atmosphere. Neglect on research dealing with ozone depletion and effects, green and sustainable technologies. A lot of us, we do not take the research serious on ozone layer, climate change, and other issues. And this calls for a lot of sharing and understanding between NGOs as what we are doing today. The excessive use of charcoal leading to the destruction of trees necessary to trap carbons. The low use of eco-friendly transportation tools like bamboo bicycles, solar cars in face of an increase in the use of diesel and petrol-powered alternatives in Africa. The low use of eco-friendly devices like solar cookers, solar dryers, recycling, aquaponics, and hydroponics. Poor collaborative agenda between stakeholders involved in ozone management devices, which gives us reason to believe that such a meeting as we're having here is really a step toward the right direction, because you cannot combat this without collaboration. Some incidences of ozone depletion. Cracks in the protective shield against direct ultraviolet rays have effects on living things. We've talked about exposure to it leads to mutations and extinctions, and we've also talked about the issue that it makes tilling in agriculture more difficult. And when tilling is difficult, it means that women spend more time in the farms. When they spend more time in the farm, it means they do not have the means to strategize on other livelihoods options, maybe like knitting and weaving, and they get too tired, and probably they cannot also hand down maybe traditional knowledge systems to their children because they are overworked. We also have ozone destruction, which leads to desertification, fallow lands, and migrations from formerly fertile areas to more fertile areas. There have been recent migrations in Moripe, in Ghana, the Okavango Delta, in the Sahel, which the northern part of Cameroon is also inclusive. And when these people migrate, it leads to a situation where recipient populations might not welcome them because they are competing on food and other resources, and therefore we have situations of internal conflicts in regions or individuals who are migrated to hostile areas. And the delegate mentioned about the Achucoco, and acid rains have been linked to ozone depletion, and acid rains have also been linked to the destruction of cocoyams. So we all eat achu here, and if it is lost in our fabric of handed out traditions, I think it's going to be very negative to us. So we have to look at that very seriously. Destruction of crops may lead to scarcity of local seeds, and when we have the scarcity of local seeds, it means we need to depend now on genetically modified organisms. And when we depend on genetically modified organisms, it is most likely that the value chain of agriculture is going to be imposed from outside. The next thing is like global warming and climate change are incidences that have direct consequences on the poor, as they are mostly ill-equipped to handle the shocks and stresses. All the reports tend to reveal that the implications from ozone depletion and the incidences of climate change will affect us who are in low-income economies. Therefore, it is our duty to even advocate more seriously for that the ozone layer is not depleted. The next slide, please. So exposure to direct ultraviolet rays leads to land degradation and high external inputs, as I said before, the use of fertilizers. Fertilizers end up getting into groundwater. When they get into the groundwater, in most cases they destroy aquatic species. We also have what they call algae bloom. And when there's algae bloom, the oxygen in the water is used by algae, and subpopulations like edible frogs, which are a main tool of resilience in other ecosystems and life forms, that cannot be harvested And therefore, in a country like Cameroon, where the price of meat is about 2,500, and access to proteins by poor households is marginal, it would be very nice for us to have diversification of our access to proteins so that households can be able to have healthy living. So, and if we have diminishing fisheries around here that we've recorded, and then we also have that small rivers lose their fish populations. Here we have diminishing fisheries based on other issues like twin trawling and other aspects. But if all these activities are combined, the impact becomes too serious for us. And therefore, those habits that make us to lose these strategies for survival need to be revisited. And when we lose our livelihoods, we know that there are so many other people will have to lose certain other advantages. Families will have to prioritize on their resources. Maybe girl children will have to stop going to school, will be sent into marriage early, especially in traditions where the bride price is used as a form of income regeneration. So everything is linked in terms of that. Next slide. So transforming habits into actions mitigating ozone layer depletion. Humans might have to alter their dependence on equipment and technologies emitting CFCs. Good areas to switch to include solar-powered refrigeration, solar coolers, cookers, and dryers. This switch will help to reduce CFCs emitting and also mainstream the poor into accessible and affordable technologies. Solar dryers have been designed by Iraq Batoke, and probably if you see someone like Dr. Ayabi and Dr. Chiambeng, they will give some ideas about solar dryers in Batoke. And also solar coolers and incubators have also been tested in Burkina Faso. Traditional dependence on hydrocarbons will have to be curbed. Other sources of energy like hydro, geothermal, and biogas from plants and animal residues should be stepped up as they demand less costly technologies to valorize and pulverize. Production of biofuel can also be an option, but this is very tricky because if we get into the habit of producing food for biofuel, it might lead to a situation where people don't have food, but we have plantations that produce food for biofuel. And also the speculation of food is also supposed to be curbed in order that we can be able to switch into biofuel production in an extensive manner in an economy like Cameroon. So transforming agriculture into more organic models will help reduce dependence on expensive high external inputs, and therefore it is necessary to advocate for systems like agroforestry, analog forestry like Sendep has done, agroecology, aquaponics, and hydroponics. Some reasons why Africa must be concerned. Africa is extremely exposed to climate change given its low capacity to respond and adapt. We have little technologies in place to resist climate change, and therefore we need to strive at working on measures to prevent the impact of climate change and ozone depletion on us. The average annual rate of change in total forest area from 1990 to 2000 for the whole of Africa was estimated at we were losing about 5 million hectares of forest a year. The cumulative value of that loss is very significant, and I think that it is enough reason for us to be very worried of what is taking place here. Almost 50% of glaciers in Africa on the Rwenzori Mountains, Mount Kenya, and Kilimanjaro are lost, while larger glaciers, particularly on Kilimanjaro, are fragmented. Africa's poor are vulnerable to droughts and floods, since many depend on rain-fed agriculture and on flood recession agriculture. Burkina Faso and Mali have among the highest rates of malnutrition in West Africa and the world. So, including the Sahelian countries as well, this issue makes us to feel that we need to manage how crops are grown, how animals strive, what we eat, and how we distribute them. And other livelihoods have been lost in areas like among the Tokana and the Rendil pastoralists. I think among the Bororo in Cameroon, a lot of pasture land is also lost, and it has made a lot of migrations of cattle to other areas that were not traditionally areas for the feeding of animals. I think you now see many more cows that are coming to the southwest, which is not a region for that. It is not a coincidence. So, biomass, particularly wood fuel, is a vital source of energy in sub-Saharan Africa, with the exception of South Africa. Over 90% of the total energy consumption is biomass in a country like Ethiopia. So we need to modify that, and something like charcoal that we use for producing food and other things can be modernized, or we can use the twigs from the leaves and the branches of trees and compress them to produce briquettes, and that we can use also as a mechanism to get fuel, and we don't need to cut down the whole tree. We can also plant fodder crops for animals. They grow very fast, and this is very important in Africa, which is facing a serious situation of land grabbing and the expansion of palm oil plantations in West and Central Africa, including what many colleagues have just highlighted recently. Okay, someone mentioned about market back. So the theory of a single market back. This is some theoretical thinking. It's within this organization. It works on the notion that if households can prioritize on having a single market bag for doing their shopping, it will significantly reduce the number of plastics that are dumped around because they were collected from the market after products were paid for. Many people and families shop several times in a day and come home with plastics that are not biodegradable and which will not be recycled due to poor infrastructures on recycling. So if just 5 members of a family went to buy without a family bag and brought home plastics during their purchases, the number of plastics for 10,000 households would be 50,000 plastic bags in a day and 5 million plastic bags in just 100 days. Most of these plastics can be avoided with a single bag. Bicycle Sundays. This has been practiced in Latin America, where cars are not allowed to circulate on Sundays in order to curb emissions from CFCs. The impact of such a practice in cities with millions of cars and bike owners cannot be underestimated, especially if the practice is looked as a fuel-saving and eco-friendly device. If you calculate that you spend 1,000 every Sunday that you go out with your car, it might be a way of saving money. If you multiply the Sundays in the year, that would be 52. Therefore, you should be able to save about 52,000 francs. And therefore, we should also look at other examples like bicycles made out of bamboo, because bamboo is the fastest growing grass and can also add an environmental dimension in such a practice, like in curbing ozone depletion. Also, bicycle riding is a sport. Therefore, it is an incident that can help us in other aspects like healthy living. Biogas-dependent households. It would be good for us. The price of normal gas is about 6,000, and many of the households they live below $1.25, and it's very difficult for many households to be able to access gas, or they depend on other rudimentary methods like harvesting wood for fuel. And biogas is something that can be used. It simply needs biodigesters, which is not a complicated technology. You use your waste from the house, probably with rumen from the intestines of animals and chicken, goats. I think most households have it. And then you produce your biogas, and the residue can be used as organic fertilizers. And that will also reduce dependence on expensive inorganic fertilizers that affect access to farmers because of their share price. And I think that civil society organizations should be the main vehicle to chariot this idea. Next slide. Canopy houses. This is a thinking that advocates for the planting of trees, both for fruits and as shades around houses. It works on the notion that no matter the space available for building, room should be created for planting at least a tree or trees before or after a building project is completed. The use of trees to trap carbons and their medicinal, food, and health properties are also very vital in this consideration, and their economic value as well. Trees can also help in producing fodder for animals, sticks for fuels, and the making of briquettes, which I mentioned earlier. And the leaves can be mixed with poultry, cow and pig dung, rumen and human waste to produce biogas and organic fertilizers. So in this kind of setup, your house becomes almost like an industry, and you become self-sufficient in your activities. Shade trees are also very joyous. You can make picnics under, and they can offer room for birds to build their nest on, and therefore we can also have biodiversity in that light. Some tested practices have drawn some few examples across the world that some action has been done. The United Nations Development Program and the United Nations Environmental Program have joined hands and launched the Poverty Environment Initiative. The PEI is a global UN program that helps countries to integrate poverty environment linkages into national and sub-national policy, from policy making to budgeting, implementation, and monitoring. We also have UN-funded programs in biogas in the Rwandan countryside that has helped schools and prison centers to have their production of, to have their dependence on other forms of energy. We have KFS, FAO, and Equity Bank, which have teamed up to create sustainable livelihood development projects that aim at enhancing food security while at the same time encouraging conservation at the Mau complex in Kenya. You also have, among human activities, agriculture, which is one of the largest producers of methane, a potent greenhouse gas 22 times more damaging to the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. So now an IFAD supported project in China's Guangxi province is also encouraging thousands of poor farmers to turn the methane produced on their farms into fuel for lighting and cooking. So in rural areas of Cameroon, where we don't have electricity, and that we also face fallouts based on the privatization of our main electricity producing company, and that has actually outsourced rural electrification to other sources. It will be very necessary for us to look at the possibility of embedding this kind of technologies within rural setups, I beg your pardon. So the divide between rural areas and urban areas will not be that felt. Children will be able to read at night, and they will be able to compete with urban children as well. There is the Fork Ecology Initiative, a project using participatory techniques to teach integrated soil management techniques to farmers in Western Kenya. That is a replicable project that can be also used by stakeholders here to design things. And I've mentioned about Iraq and their efficient ovens that use less wood fuel, and Pendek, which has done some tree plantings in Mabeta, and now I gather that Leonette has done that as well. And for we, African Center for Community and Development owns and moderates the holistic approach to sustainable development group on LinkedIn that I invite all of you to become members on. You'll be able to network and communicate with development experts from across the world and to share your ideas and project areas with other people. Then I think it's also going to help you in understanding what some other people have done and where you can learn and also ask questions about your projects. We also run the Hello Africa group, and our updates online can also help in shaping your ideas about sustainable development. So let's attempt to make it to links. There's a link between emission of CFCs, ozone depletion, livelihoods, global warming, climate change, resilience against diseases, poverty, biodiversity, energy, health, wealth, well-being, agriculture, and fisheries. Therefore, everything is linked. And if everything is linked, it means that we are dealing with diverse stakeholders. And it will be only comprehensive when we involve all stakeholders in shaping of policy and in implementation devices for sustainable development, for the curbing of ozone depletion as well. Making of links helps to create participation also, and it creates an environment for collaboration, which is vital for modern social policy delivery. Conclusion, this presentation has demonstrated that transforming habits can be vital in shaping better devices to reduce ozone layer depletion. The presentation has highlighted people and the choices they make as strategies that must be revisited to give meaning and dimension in the global fight against ozone depletion, climate change, and the various ramifications associated with these issues. Therefore, making links between sectors and subpopulations and investing in habits that curb plastic use and dumping, CFC emissions via industrialization, on sustainable agriculture, and the use of inorganic fertilizers must be looked in the light of other eco-friendly solutions like a single market bag per family, bicycle Sundays, canopy houses, and the use of biogas, solar dryers, cookers, and coolers. Transforming habits can help in mitigating ozone layer depletion. This will only work if people and stakeholders collaborate across levels and interests, and if the protection of the earth is looked as a sacred duty and an unavoidable need. It will only work if the right technologies are put in place and are affordable and accessible. Next. So that is a bibliography that I have arranged so that you can also have resources about climate change, ozone depletion, and other issues. And I think it's going to be useful. You can also watch our conference we did here in Cameroon on sustainable strategies and practices for development. And there are about 26 videos on that site, the last link. They can also help to shape ideas about what we can do and how we can do them. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. Gracias, Arrey Ivo.
Thank you very much. And you just listened to a young girl who was saying that the Nigerian community here is totally very angry. Covers all the aspects of various techniques of our general.
This was the Ozone country of the Niger Delta of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He went to several schools to make your academic genesis was at the government college to Delhi.
Go gather, destroy their food. Make cultivated camp and that other camp, Mbongaya camp, you don't compensate everybody. But some of them
in its degeneration sometimes. Today our focus will be in the style of J.P. Clark, a poet and writer, and we shall also be very interested in his poem Agro Dancer.
It's something that needs to be exploited.
Some lives are meaningful, some are empty. Lives that are meaningful with too much meaning and riches to offer humankind. Long after some of these earthly adventures and no more, one can still find footprints of these great lives on the pavements of our contemporary life.
Good evening, you're welcome to the program Green Planet.